If you're working in Python as an analyst, engineer, or data scientist, one of the most common tasks that you'll encounter is to read in data in the form of CSV files. A lot of the big data, huge data sets with millions of records, are actually stored across multiple files. If you want to work with this data, you need to be able to read in CSV files. Luckily, Python has a module which will help you with this. You don't have to write your own code. This is the CSV module, and that's what we'll study in this video. In the data directory under the current working directory, I have a students.csv file and I'm going to explore it. Notice the exclamation mark at the beginning, which allows me to run shell commands. If you didn't know this already, CSV stands for comma separated value, and it's a very standard way to lay out records within a file. Notice that this CSV file has 4 student records and the individual fields within a record are separated using commas. In order to work with this data, I'm going to import the CSV module. This is a built-in module. You can open the CSV file exactly like we did before using the open built-in function. This file has been opened in the read mode and the file handle is csv_file. The CSV module allows you to create something called a CSV reader. CSV.reader, pass in the file handle, and you can use the CSV reader now to read the records and fields in the CSV file. We'll first initialize the rows variable as an empty list and iterate through every row in our CSV reader with the for in loop. Now, this might look very similar to how we iterated over text files, but this time the CSV reader knows that every record is in CSV format and it will extract the individual fields from it. We'll print out the row and also append the row to the rows list. You can also get information on the total number of rows that are in the file by accessing the line num variable on the CSV reader. This is the output of this piece of code. We've printed out every row. Now notice some interesting things about individual records here. Every record is a list, and within the list, the individual fields have been extracted and are elements of the list. Instead of reading an individual line as a string, it has read it as a CSV record, and this is extremely useful. It's already done the parsing and the extracting of fields for us. If you print out the value that's stored in the rows list, you'll see that it is a list of lists. Every record is a list. Within a record, there are fields which are separated by commas originally. We can now use a nested loop to iterate over the rows and the individual fields in every row. So here is a nested for loop. The outer for loop iterates over rows. The inner for loop iterates over the columns in a row. The print statement within the nested for loop prints out the individual field values of every record. The end parameter is an input argument to the print statement, which you can use to define what you want that print statement to be terminated with. By default, we end with a new line. If you want to change that, you have to specify a value for this end parameter. Here we've specified that after every field has been printed out, we should print out a space. That is the end of our print. After every row, we have an empty print statement which takes us to the next line. And here are all the records where individual fields are separated by spaces thanks to the space that we've specified as the end input argument to the print function. Within the data folder, there is another file called students_delimiter space.txt. This is a text file which has records, but the individual fields within the records are separated by space, not by comma, which is why this is kind of like a CSV file, but it's actually a text file. This file contains the same 4 records that we are familiar with, but every field in a record is delimited by a space from the next field. Python CSV module is smart enough to interpret this as a CSV file as well. You can open the file as before, and then you can use the CSV reader in order to read it as a CSV file. The one change here is that you have to specify that the delimiter is a space. The delimiter by default is assumed to be a comma, indicating that it's a space. We'll treat it like a CSV file with a different delimiter. The rest of the code is the same as before. We use the for in loop to iterate through every row. We print out the row, append it to the rows list, and we'll also print out the total number of rows in this file. And when you see the result, you'll see that we have successfully read the CSV file, which has space as a delimiter rather than the comma